seagulls follow trawler. It's because they think sardines will be thrown into the sea. Thank you very much.
Talking nonsense. So I thought, no, enough's enough. Why should I put up with that? Talking nonsense. So I thought, no, enough's enough. Why should I put up with that? Don't back down, double down. Don't back down, double down.
Yes, here we go. It's the Monday Club already. It's came back round, Jonathan. I hope you've had a great weekend and you've recovered from that little defeat on Friday, Jonathan. It's funny that because the first cup is in this Boyce'S trophy cabinet, and it was a year ago today that the first trophy was put into Ange Postecoglou's and Celtic's trophy cabinet as well. So very strange coincidences. Obviously just a winning weekend for those with a winning mentality, mate. But we'll not start all that again this weekend, Jonathan. I don't want you emotionally scarring me with all your nasty put-downs anymore. I've only just about recovered myself. How are you?
Yeah, no, I'm good. It's good to be back on the Monday Club, the last Monday Club before Christmas. Christmas is coming very soon, and you know Celtic are set to reward their fans with a perfect Christmas gift with a 9-point lead, I think, minimum going in. Small matter of Livingston to come on Wednesday. Rangers go to Pittodrie tomorrow, but the big news was Celtic did not drop points, as many might have expected over the weekend, and because of that, I am very confident now Celtic will be going into the Christmas period with a 9-point lead minimum intact.
I like that, Jonathan. I like that confidence, mate. I like it. You sound like you are feeling that maybe that was the sort of, what would you call it? The potentially the banana skin. That's what I'm looking for. The banana skin. We've got that one out the road. Is that how you're feeling? Like that was going to be the toughest test between now and the derby?
Oh, absolutely. I think when you looked at the form Aberdeen were in, it was always going to be a case that was going to be a tricky game. It was a trickier game for a different point of view than I expected. I did say on Friday I thought there'd be goals. Well, what do I know about these things? But both teams went into that game free scoring. It did seem as if it had all the potential there to be a blockbuster up at Pittodrie. In the end, it was a Z-rated film, not one to be watched again by anybody. But you've got to say it was one of those, again, examples of Celtic persevering and continuing to go. I'm sure there was a few people that were beginning to wonder if the goal was coming. I thought Aberdeen, whilst I didn't appreciate the way they set themselves up, they certainly went about their business defensively pretty well and limited us to limited good opportunities in the game, despite the fact they had 30-odd shots on goal. I don't think we had many clear-cut opportunities. It did feel like it was one of those games that might have fizzled out as a 0-0 draw, and that the repercussions of that would have meant, that Rangers would have had a little bit of a glimmer of hope if that had been the case until Callum McGregor steps up towards the end. And it's the perfect story, isn't it, with Callum McGregor just coming back from his long-term layoff. And it's not the first time McGregor has came up trumps under Ange Postecoglou after a long period out of the team. So I think it was fitting that he got the goal. I thought it was a terrific performance from him as well. And I just think when you're looking at that whole performance, it's one that, whilst we only won the game 1-0, I think on another day, that could have easily been a 3 or 4. It was just a question of if and when Celtic got that first goal. Unfortunately, because it came in the 87th minute, it just meant we weren't able to really push on and really put Aberdeen to the sword for the way they set up, because the way they set up for that game, they actually deserve to get hounded about 4 or 5-0 just to make sure that Jim Goodwin knows that's not an acceptable way to set up your team at Pittodrie if you're an Aberdeen fan.
Aye, I mean, we discussed it at length. You know, maybe my sort of path of thought has changed now, Jonathan, on the old ways to win debate, ways to get beat. Sorry, I should say debate, because yeah, I kind of think maybe there is a way to lose games. Having watched Aberdeen's performance at the weekend, it's quite funny how it takes a different team's display and us being the receiving end of it, sort of go, you know what? That is pretty shit. Do you know what I mean? That is pretty shit. And yeah, maybe sort of, I think, yeah, my direction of travel on that one, my mind's direction of travel, I should say, is maybe just changed ever so slightly on that one, actually. Although, again, I go back to it next season, it'll be about points, not plaudits. Get that hashtagged anytime you want. Right, we will get all that good stuff done before we get into tonight's show as well. If you are watching, hit the like button. 82 on the bus already. We're only 17 minutes in. So yeah, please do hit that like button. It gets us all the more traction on YouTube, and we see we're getting a lot of traction, Jonathan, not just on YouTube, but with our audio downloads as well. We are getting a hell of a lot more impressions. It seems to have rocketed this week, from one place to one that's a million miles away. So thank you to all who are downloading our audio podcasts on Spotify and iTunes and all that carry on. If you want to share the video on your socials, that's always helpful. Always, most importantly, keep the live chat going. I can't bring up every single comment, but as you know, we bring up more comments than any other Celtic podcast out there, and that is because we welcome debate. We don't run away from it. We are all for it. It's not an echo chamber on the Boyce'S bus. Absolutely not. And if you want to become a Boyce'S bus member, like Gary Brown, like Belly, like Brown Warrior, Paul Diet as well, I'm seeing there, Patrick McLaughlin, it's $1.99 a month. It is completely optional. It is purely just to keep the wheels running. It means that the subscriptions are easier to afford and it keeps the channel being self-sustainable. But that is absolutely optional. Our content is free, obviously, because who the hell in their right mind, Jonathan, would be paying to watch us idiots talk about Celtic? People just rather win the cause. Just rather win the cause, you know. And Bob McBob, a big shout out to you. Hope that your daughter is doing well, mate. I did see your comments the other night, mate. I hope she enjoyed her Chinese. Right, okay, Jonathan. We've obviously done 2 shows since the Saturday game, so it's good to get your thoughts on Saturday. But like everything, so on to the next one. What else could be happening in the world of Celtic? And there's always stuff happening. That's the thing. It's never ever going to be quiet. Obviously, the big headline news that they're going to keep going for, Jonathan, between now and the 1st of January. They already have been, and that is the case of Josip Juranovic. Barcelona, the latest club to be linked. I think I would have told you 4 weeks ago that's nonsense. Now I think, obviously, when you look at the other teams being linked, it does sort of lead you to thinking there is potential interest from a team like that. However, one thing I will say, right, is I don't think that that's the sort of club at this moment in time would be my choice to be doing business with. Why? Many reasons for that. I'm not as well versed on it as some, but I remember watching a fantastic or listening to a fantastic sort of piece on Barcelona. Was it on YouTube or was I listening to it? One of the two anyway, fuck knows. And it was about their transfer dealings in the summer and how they were actually signing players. I mean, they didn't even have like 4 of their signings. They weren't even sure if they're going to be able to register in time for the season starting, Jonathan, because they'd breached so many rules. Lewandowski being one of them. So it was like, this is all bizarre. And I don't want to go down the road where we're looking at this big fee of 20 million quid and we're all pissing our pants, but we find out it was over 5 years or something in installments because we're never really going to see the benefit of that, Jonathan. That's what, Ryan Kent, I think he was about over 4 years or something from Liverpool, that £7 million deal. And that's how they were affording it, which is fine. That's their gift to bid like that. If that's your financial position, of course it is. And then, I just think the problem I've got with the Barcelona one that concerns me the most is I would suspect they would offer it in a staggered amounts that wouldn't benefit us, as I say, as much. But I also think they would turn the player's head the most. I think when you look, Jonathan, through the years of English Premier League clubs flying high at their, at the big guns like Manchester United, Liverpool, Arsenal, Chelsea, there is examples all over the place that when Barcelona, Real Madrid come calling, that you just can't say no. So they're an exception. Barcelona and Real Madrid in that league are really exceptional clubs. Atletico Madrid, albeit probably third, but not as far out of that reckoning, I suppose, now, since Simeone's revolution there over the last decade. But what my worry would be, we would have a team, ironically, like West Ham, who would probably be able to go, what did you say, £20 million? Boom. We can wire it to you right now.
Yeah.
But Barcelona are interested, Jonathan. The player ain't going to be wanting to go to West Ham, is he? And that would then lead us into a situation where, if it were Barcelona, and of course this is paper talk at this moment in time, but who cares? We're allowed to speculate. We don't represent the club or anything. We can only talk on facts and all that nonsense. Yeah. I think it gets a wee bit serious, all that carry on. And we ain't all that serious. But yeah, I just think if the interest is concrete, that would be a bit of a concern to me, because I think it could be a case of all skirt, no knickers with the bid that gets made. You know what I mean? And it'll be, which is usually, I'm usually all for that. However, I do think in the case of Barcelona, I just think they'll get the headline fee, all right, and they'll bid the £21 million, something like that. But the devil will be in the detail on that one. And I just think that wouldn't really benefit Celtic.
No, there is definitely merit to that argument. Barcelona have been having renowned financial difficulties, so you would have to suggest if it was going to be in the region of a £20 million move for Juranovic, and just what some are expecting him to end up going for after a particularly impressive World Cup run that ended up finishing, with Croatia finishing third in the overall standings at the World Cup. It is going to pique clubs' interest, like a Barcelona. Of course, they're going to have been watching this World Cup with interest, and they're going to be looking at the teams that have got to the latter stages. And I think in some ways it's probably not ideal for us, because the fact Croatia probably weren't at the start of that World Cup expected to do as well as they did. Now, I know they got to the World Cup final the last time around, but it's an aging team, and Croatia's population and the size, they punch above their weight massively when it comes to those tournaments. But the longer the teams stay in, the more interest you're likely to get from the likes of Barcelona, who are going to be looking at the players that make the impressions by going the distance or close to the distance in that tournament. Now, Barcelona do not have a lot of financial scope to be putting down £20 million hard cash in one move. It would absolutely be in instalments if it was going to be a Barcelona that were coming in. Barcelona are still, a very attractive club. Granted, they've probably not been as successful the last few years as they were previously, probably since Messi's left, even probably just before that as well. They've not been as consistent in terms of performances at the top end in the Champions League. However, make no mistake about it, they've very much got that aura about them as a club, similar to like a Manchester United does in England, where they can lure players in despite the fact they've maybe not been as successful as they once were. If the rumour proves to be true, I think Juranovic is absolutely going to be looking at Barcelona as his number one choice if you were to put the options on the table to him. Because I think you're looking at Barcelona, Atletico Madrid, and then there's two unnamed English clubs, was what Sky Sports were reporting today. So we don't know who the English clubs are, but I would imagine they are going to be in the mix of a West Ham type of situation, mid-table sort of Premiership club. I would expect that to be. So if those are the options on the table, Juranovic is going to be pushing for a move to Barcelona, in my opinion. From a Celtic point of view, it would probably depend on what that package deal is going to be. Ideally, of course, you'd rather have all the money up front, but if Barcelona are perhaps willing to offer you a good deal, and it's not split over a ridiculous period of time, I know you're talking 3 or 4 years, but if it was in a couple of installments, 2 or 3 installments, it might be more palatable to the board in that way, particularly if the player is bouncing up and down and wanting that move. So I think, if Barcelona come in, I think that's probably where he'll end up. Would I rather he went to the English Premiership and we got the money all up front? Absolutely, because you want that money to reinvest, particularly in January. I think Postecoglou's in such a strong position in the league at the moment that he can almost start forward planning towards the summer as well, particularly depending on how the results go over the next couple of games. I said 9 points minimum going into Christmas. I think it'll actually be higher, because I think Rangers will drop points either tomorrow or on Friday night. I don't think they'll win both of those games.
Fighting talk already, I like it.
Yeah, I don't think they'll win both those games. I think we'll win our next two, home to Livingston and home to St Johnstone. Our next two games are, and then obviously we play away at Hibs before we go to Ibrox as well. So they're 3 winnable games. I certainly think the hardest game that we are going to play in the build-up to Ibrox has just been played. So if we get ourselves into a position where, say, 12 points clear, then Ange Postecoglou's in a position where he knows it's going to take a monumental fuck-up for Celtic not to go on to win the league title if he gets into a position like that. And then January almost becomes one of those luxury windows where you could actually start the planning for the summer 6 months early, because you're in such a strong league position that unless something goes drastically wrong, you're going to have Champions League guaranteed football once again at Celtic Park next year. You've got even more time to plan out, because bear in mind, last season, nobody knew which way that league title was going to go around this time last year. In fact, most would have probably still favoured Rangers to have won the league at this time last year. So I think if you can get a deal for Juranovic, I think Russell makes more sense to have the money up front, to go back to your original point, because then that lets him go and look in January for the players he needs to identify to improve the squad, so we can actually make a bit more of a dent in Europe next year if the results and the football play out the way I expect they will. And as I say, after the Ibrox game, I still think Celtic will be a minimum of 9 points clear, perhaps more.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I do see as well Celtic maintaining, despite the derby getting played away, I still think we'll come out of that run of fixtures, if you wanted to, to sort of end, say, this next group of fixtures with the derby at Ibrox. I think we'll come away 9 points clear as the bare minimum as well. I'm confident on that. And that, of course, puts us in a fantastic position, but also gives Ange, yet again, just another wee couple of percentage of bargaining tools. My worry, of course, would be the board going, oh, you're already loads clear, you don't need anything from us. But if time will tell on that one. That's a different debate. With regards to Juranovic, Barcelona, for example, the team that he's been linked with today, I think there's a couple of positives to it as well, which we're remiss not to look at, because right now we're in a position where we've got overdraft facility there anyway. So if we knew there was extra money coming in, and we've got like the transfer deal all there, and it's in the contract, and that's guaranteed revenue over X amount of time, then it doesn't really change your position, that you could still probably spend what you're eventually going to bring in. But the one thing about a player going to Barcelona from Celtic is, undeniably, Jonathan, it piques interest at what Celtic are doing now. From a selfish fan's point of view, we don't want any more interest in our players. We want them all just carry on doing what you're doing. We love that, but we know that's not the real world that we live in. And sometimes it's quite nice, I suppose, to have the club's reputation being enhanced. We named it Barcelona. I mean, Henrik was the last person to leave Celtic direct for Barcelona. So what was that? That was 18 and a half years ago. So this isn't something that happens often. And Henrik was obviously a generational sort of talent for Celtic to have in their doors. Juranovic, though, would be one that maybe people would go, oof, I thought he did well at the World Cup. Now Barcelona are signing them. Have they got any more? And before, they were saying we have plucked talent from the J League. We might be an affordable sort of club that for other big guns in Europe to start thinking, oh, wait now. And I think our reputation, that's been slowly growing over the last decade anyway. And there's loads of examples that we've listed many times on the show that can cover that. But the thing is with the Barcelona one, I mean, I think Phil was saying they still owe money. Now, we are not talking Coutinho money here, and it's never going to be, right? But if it were to be a £20 million move or whatever, and it was in installments, there is obviously an example when you look at the Coutinho one, they still owe money on that. Coutinho's not even at Barcelona anymore. He's played for Bayern since then. He's now at Aston Villa. It's like, I don't know what the story is there. So yes, that was a massive amount of money that Coutinho joined Barcelona for. But everything's relative, and we've got to be honest here, because actually, £20 million, £25 million to Celtic is also massive in its own right. It's relative. And we've got to make sure that's going to be coming in. And that anything that would be in agreement with a club like Barcelona, then okay, it can be installments, but let's not take the piss here with it. Let's not move goalposts as we go. And hopefully we'll be able to get all that sort of set in stone. We will move on to a different talking point. Just going to quickly bring this up from Jerry. Jerry wants a double Doon t-shirt. He wants to complete it with the tracky wearing Daz at his work. Love that, mate. Jerry, that's brilliant. There are plans in place. It's just you need a bit of capital at the start, which unfortunately we're not quite there yet with the bus. But there is plans. I know I can set up a shop online. It just would be another subscription, which would be quite a lot of money to do it. And then they charge me for the stock first. And then you get it recompensed to you once like the deals went through. So initially you would need to have quite a bank, because I know what you're like. It'll go nuts in the first day. I'll just look at my bank balance, Jonathan, and start shaking myself. I can't afford my bus to work or something. Do you know what I mean? I should get buses for free. The amount of fucking promoting I do for buses. But there is plans next year. Hopefully we'll get to a stage early sort of springtime, and we'll be able to go, right, let's let the shop loose. So we will be, remember, do another Double Doon t-shirt. There'll certainly be merchandise coming out. There's a few wee one-liners, Jonathan. I've got ideas of putting on the front. In fact, we'll put one to a competition as well at some point. Your favourite one-liner from the bus, and we'll put that on one of the t-shirts.
Nobody cares, mate. Nobody cares, mate.
I thought that might be high on the list. But yeah, we will do that. I mean, mine's going to just say acutely aware. But yes, we will maybe do a wee competition in the start, and I'll maybe bang heads with a couple of people and see what we can do, what we could come up with initially to try and get that running, because the merch that we did before was extremely successful. So we would like to do that. And again, I would still make sure that the quality is there as well, and make sure that the stuff's good. Anyway, enough of that shite. It's just when I seen that question there, Jerry, you distracted me, big man. Right, okay. Oh, Belly, you're too kind. There we go, Jonathan. The Empire's getting built right now.
You.
Belly with £5 right in there. And return of chunks in my trunks is donated £2, but I cannot bring that comment up. Something about Bob's sister. I'm just not going there. Jonathan, interesting one for me, this. Celtic basically had a full choice squad to choose from, bar Juranovic at the weekend. Was there anyone else missing? Haksabanovic at the last minute.
Haksabanovic pulled out, yep.
But in defence, right back, we had Tony Ralston coming in. Centre backs, we had our options, Jonathan. We had 4 of them, and the 4 centre backs we had was obviously Jens, the main man Cameron Carter-Vickers, Stephen Welsh, and Carl Starfelt. He went with CCV. You're about to start laughing. Am I making you laugh here?
I was just wondering if you were going to remember them all. You seemed as if you were struggling. You were like, yes, then big CCV. I was like, is he going to remember all these? Am I going to have to butt in? I was like, is this him preparing for Sutton Death?
I love how that makes you happy. Right, okay.
Just watching your cogs turn, it is amusing sometimes.
Thanks so much, mate. Thank you. Jota. Right, okay. But with those 4 centre-backs, we chose 2 of them, and it was Starfelt who was back in ahead of our summer signing, Moritz Jens. Yes, and that told me a wee story that when we were all fit, now Carl Starfelt, I thought had a decent second half of the season last year. All right, and then we had the situation where Jens came in. Linked, I think the rumour that's linked with this deal is £4 to £5 million, between 4 and 5 million. He certainly cost the club that we got him from Lorient, I think it is. Someone can correct me if I'm wrong. For around that sort of fee, and I think they're looking to recoup that, albeit we got it on the option to buy, which I am a fan of to an extent as well. Now, I wonder if we got an insight there. Obviously, we've brought in another centre half for January, so that tells you Ange wants to strengthen that area. and then we're back to last season's. I think when we're trying to go back to last season's, first choice partnership, that tells me that when we signed Jens, Jonathan, that maybe, just maybe, I think Jens would have been signed surely to be that starter, because there's no point in getting more padding in an area we already had Stephen Welsh. I just wonder if that's a wee bit of insight that maybe we are going to go again for a centre-back in the summer, and Jens might actually spend a wee bit more time on the bench this second half of the season. For me, I mean, Scott Cameron's asking the question there, is Jens worth 4 million? I don't know. I mean, 4 million, it depends. It's all context, and, values of players is how much you want them and how much you really want to shell out for them. I'm not convinced that Ange, considering he signed another centre-half, I don't know. I just wonder if Jens might, because I would imagine Kobayashi is going to be getting integrated in the second half of the season at times. And we all know that once Starfelt and CCV were in situ last year, Ange was reluctant to break that partnership up at any point. They started a crazy amount of games together. So do you think maybe Jens has had that first half of the season to really impress, and then the fact that after the World Cup came back and everyone's fully fit, that he's not the one selected and it was Starfelt? I mean, it could be a wee bit early to be saying this, but do you think maybe he might find himself not actually getting as much game time as he did in the first half of the season now that Starfelt's back fit?
Well, yeah, I think the fact that Starfelt's back fit and Kobayashi is going to be in the door in January would point towards the fact he's going to face a lot stronger competition now anyway than he did earlier on in the season for his starting place. I think it's probably one of the benefits of the option to buy coming into effect here, is that if Ange Postecoglou's had enough time to see him now, and he's maybe thought, you know what, he's not better than what I've already got, we're not going to take up that option of getting another one of my boys in from Japan. I can then have another look in the summer for another option, because it looks like Welsh is going to be out the door, which I think everyone has came to accept he's not going to make it at Celtic anyway, so there's going to be no shedding of any tears there if that turns out to be the case. So I think if you're looking at Jens, I think he's still got an opportunity to make a mark, but I think his opportunity may not be as great as it was in the first half of the season.
I totally agree with that.
I think there's a very high possibility he'll still feature at times, but he is going to have to put in some excellent performances if he wants to make the deal permanent for me, because, as I say, if they're bringing in another one from Japan, I think the fact of the matter is, I think sometimes, I know Starfelt comes in for a lot of criticism, but him and Carter Vickers were essential together in the second half of last season in that title running. A lot is made of how good we were going forward, but we didn't concede an awful lot either, and I think a lot of people didn't quite always grasp that, particularly in the media, that we were actually very solid defensively, because Starfelt is prone to moments of erraticness. I think sometimes his good work actually gets undervalued, and I think, to be fair against Aberdeen, I know he didn't have an awful lot to do, but he handled everything well. It was a perfect game for him in the sense that Aberdeen's way of playing was trying to put the ball over the top for Duke to run onto. And, Starfelt was just cleaning everything up that was coming up in the air to him. But that's exactly what he's like. He's a no-nonsense defender at the end of the day. And he was, about £4 or £5 million signing as well in his own right, bear in mind Starfelt. So there's definitely no reason to suggest that he was ever going to be fully taken out of the team as a weak link. But I think if you're looking at Jens, I think Jens is really going to now be struggling to get too many more opportunities, unless, of course, something was to happen to one of the centre-halves and he's thrown back in. I think with the fact Kobayashi comes in, I think Jens might be limited to cup games. I wouldn't be overly surprised if that's how it ends up going, if he has his full selection of centre-halves there. I know people are asking if you think Jens is worth the £4 to £5 million. For me, based on performances thus far, probably not. I don't think he brings anything more to the team than what we already have. I think he's looked okay. I don't think he's done anything terribly wrong. I don't think he's done anything terribly amazing either, by the sense of it. He's just been a solid centre-half. Well, I think if Ange Postecoglou's looking at it and thinking, well, yeah, you've done okay, but I could do better, then I think the fans will trust that judgment. And I'm not sure, if you were to put a poll out on it, Russell, how many people would actually be overly keen on signing in the end. I think you'd be about 50-50, split in the middle on the fans.
But this is the thing, Jonathan. It's moving parts all the time with Celtic as well. Celtic aren't in the same position. See, come the summer where there is this, final option to either sign Jens or not, we could be 2 in a row by then. 2 Champions League group stages in a row by then, and maybe £20 million up on a Juranovic sale unexpectedly, you know, suddenly your ambition changes because and we're sitting with 30 in the bank right now. So suddenly you're looking at everything and going, well, we're actually in a different position than where we were this time last year. And we've actually got a year's evidence of Jens, and maybe we're looking for a bit better. Now, for me, the only reason Jens was signed was in the hope he was going to be an upgrade on Starfelt. That's not disrespecting Starfelt, but that's the point of signing a footballer. It's for them to be better than what you've already got. And my guess is that's what he was brought in to do. And based on what we've seen so far, and the fact Starfelt seems to be back ahead of him, I would say as much of a muchness. I don't see CCV as an issue. I think his position is set in stone. Kaiser seems to think we'll sell CCV. Kaiser, that would be a disastrous move. I certainly hope that's not the case. And I've got a feeling with CCV's track record of loan spells, Jonathan, I actually think he's in a completely different position than those other players that might impress initially and get talk of a move. I think he's been bitten 22 clubs or whatever it's been that he's played for. He's been bitten many times. I think the fact he signed permanently with us is he's looking to now cement his place at a club. Of course, every player has a price and they might be sold at some point. But I actually think his likelihood to be angling for a move, you know, or batting his eyelids like Juranovic, for example, are far slimmer based on all the experiences he's had at other clubs, you know, where some have been good, some have not been so good. But I definitely think the fact is we're going to be in a different position, as I say, Jonathan, come this summer. Jens, for me, would be coming in as more padding for that area. But Kobayashi's coming in to sort of probably get bedded in the second half of the season, and he'll be looking to compete, particularly from the 23-24 season onwards. I still think then there'd be room to go. Rather than spending 4 to 5 million on a guy that we think's about as good as Starfelt, maybe just a bit behind him, why not spend another couple of million? If it comes down to that, again, it's hypothetical about the prices. I'm always quick to state that. But why not go and try and get a player from a bracket above again? Because we're actually in a different position than where we were 12 months ago when we initially brought Jens in. Remember, Celtic's ahead of schedule right now of what Angie's vision for the project probably was. So yes, I do think there will be slight tweaks to where he's envisioning strengthening the squad, and slight tweaks as to what supermarkets he decides to shop in as well, which is very crucial in that debate. One other centre-back we will talk about that you touched on, Stephen Welsh, again linked today, bizarrely with foreign clubs again. Now, this is not the first time. Udinese, of course, I think made a £3 million bid for him, something like that.
Yeah, they did.
And now he's been linked, I think it was Porto, I think there's a couple of clubs in Italy, it said, maybe one in France, and it's like, fucking hell, it's weird. But again, for me, that one is, I don't see the benefit of loaning out Stephen Welsh now. I'd be amazed. I think, to be honest, he would be someone, and this isn't, again, me trying to go through Stephen Welsh or anything, I don't think he's done much wrong in a Celtic jersey. I just think the standard has raised quicker than what he's progressed. That's not a real criticism of him. I think if we'd had the season we expected last year, Jonathan, finishing runners up, he'd have probably been integrated a lot more in that, and he'd probably been going at the pace that we expected the team to. But instead, because we've just been like a steam train under Postecoglou or a steam bus, I just think he's got a wee bit left behind some of the rest. So I think if a bid comes in from this time around in that £2 to £3 million bracket, I'm convinced that this time round we would say, right, okay, let's have a discussion about that. Where do you stand on Stephen Welsh potentially?
Yeah, I mean, as I say, I think it wouldn't be one that would cause many tears to be shed if it turns out to be the end of the road for Stephen Welsh. I think perhaps part of the reason we kept hold of him, I think it was in the summer when those bids were coming in, was we had the Champions League campaign coming up, and you do need a certain number of homegrown players, I think, still in your squads for the Champions League. Now, I know we've got a few of them that are actually in the first team, and like if your McGregors, your Ralstons, Forrest, they're always kind of floating in around the first team, if not in it already. But Welsh is another one that's definitely capable of being a good squad player and also ticking that box as a homegrown player. But obviously, with us not having the European football now for the remainder of the season, Postecoglou might be more relaxed about letting him go. I think also the fact of the matter is there's no two ways about it. I think everyone knows he was fourth choice centre-back before Kobayashi's joined in. You've got to assume Kobayashi's going to jump ahead of him as well, otherwise why was he signed? So that then puts him down to fifth choice centre-back for Celtic, which means he's going to get absolutely nowhere near the first team unless we have an injury crisis at the back or there's something goes terribly wrong there. So it looks maybe as if we're all kind of phasing it towards a Stephen Welsh exit, which I think is going to be best for the player. I think it's best for the club now for him to move on. And to be fair to him, if he ends up getting a move abroad, a lot of Scottish players have now started moving more abroad. You've seen Aaron Hickey doing it. Henderson did it from Hibs, didn't he? So there's been a couple that have gone out abroad and seem to be doing all right for themselves over in Serie A. So I wonder if that's maybe made other clubs perhaps look twice at situations like this and perhaps looking at playing in players from the Scottish League that could perhaps do a job for them. So maybe Welsh is another one that they're looking at. I'm a little bit surprised with some of the clubs that are being linked with him because, as you rightly say, he's not featured overly heavily for Celtic. And whilst he's been okay, I think, most of the time he's played, I wouldn't have said he's done anything that would have had bigger European clubs really looking at him. If you'd said to me he was going to be going, I would have almost thought he'd be going to the Championship in England or possibly a tier down in the league, possibly to an Aberdeen or a Hibs if we were just willing to cut our losses on him. But, it looks like it'll be good business for the club because there's going to be a few £1 million to be made there. Yep. Stephen Welsh will get his move. Hopefully, he does well wherever he goes. He leaves with no ill feeling from the fans and Celtic can then try and push on because, as you rightly say, I think we're going to be looking at another signing of a centre-half probably in the summer when Jens goes back from his loan because I don't think we'll be taking him up. And I think that Welsh money then just gets him off the wages, gets a little bit extra cash in the bank, and then you can then reinvest that in the squad going into the summer or indeed perhaps January if Ange Postecoglou's got another name in mind. So for me, I think it's one that the fans will be quite comfortable with. I think the reassuring thing for this, Russell, is going into January, the fact that there's the talk of players going out, there isn't too much worry from Celtic's point of view on it because even with Juranovic possibly going for 20 million, I don't think Celtic fans are obviously concerned about that. And that's probably the first time I could say that when we're looking at that type of money for one of our players, we're not thinking, fuck, that's quite a big loss. Generally speaking, if we sell somebody for in and around that figure, historically, they've been our best player or certainly one of our key players. Whereas I think with Juranovic, whilst he is a very important player and a very good player, there's enough around him to back us up, and we feel quite confident with the other options we have at right back. So I think if we're looking at that now going forward, it's just a case of what are we actually going to do with that money now when it all comes in. It's one of those ones where we can really make a statement, I think, and it shows how far the clubs came where we can now be in a position where we're almost comfortable with it. The only player I think that we're being linked with possibly losing in January that would cause a concern for the Celtic fans is Giakoumakis. I think everybody else that has been talked about going out, whether you're talking Juranovic, who's one of the first team players, or whether you're talking about Stephen Welsh, who's on the fringe of things, Celtic fans are quite comfortable with that. It'll be more interesting, and I think the one that I'm most interested in terms of transfers out in January is going to be Giakoumakis. I think with the defence, I think we can afford to lose them because Postecoglou's already done the work to bring the others in, whereas with Giakoumakis, there's a question mark there, Russell, because there is no other striker in the building yet if he was to go.
Well, that's true, the Giakoumakis debate. Jeez, I think we'll be having that every single day on this show for the rest of time, Jonathan. Giakoumakis or Kyogo, I'll be having that conversation when I'm 70, which is a long way away, by the way. Sean the Mac comes in, and Jonathan, today is the 50th Monday Club, believe it or not, already. So wow. Thanks for doing that, the Monday Club with us, mate. That's been good. 50 Monday Clubs already.
Almost the 1 year anniversary of it. It'll be 52 in a couple of weeks.
Aye. And Sean the Mac comes in saying, and this has been one of the things about the 50 Monday Clubs. We've always interacted with the viewers, Jonathan, which I like to do. And Sean the Mac, none more so than you, big boy. And he says, keep all our top players, strengthen, and push for a run in Europe next season. How does that sound? Well, it sounds lovely, but do you know there's a couple of things about this. As I've already been alluding to, top players at the club right now might be our top players. That doesn't mean there's not better out there. Secondly, Celtic's moving at a pace since Ange came in, I think, it's ahead of schedule, as I say. And I think that's going to mean that whilst the bank balance is sort of building as well, there is scope to improve even your top players. And I also think on the back of this potential Juranovic transfer that happens in January, that can lead to a bit of a domino effect in terms of other clubs sniffing around our players, and there's no point in keeping guys against their will. Yes, have some resolve and make sure you get the right fee, but there is no point if they're angling to get away to keep them, as we're seeing in the case of Josip, because undeniably there's been a batting of the eyelids by his agent or him at the thought of a move, and Celtic's been pretty ruthless in it and went, sound, we've got your replacement lined up, we'll buy him in, and then we're going to charge top dollar for you, but we won't stand in your way either. Keeping all our top players strengthened and pushed for around Europe, I like the idea of that to an extent, but I also feel that if we can sell a player for what we might think is an overinflated fee, and then bring in someone we think's better from a higher sort of bracket that we normally shop in, that could be strengthening the team as well. So there's a few different angles to that one, and I think Postecoglou, that AGM quote, I think will go down as being sort of very, very poignant. You know, I think he was letting us know that guys will be.
Timing is everything with it as well, though, Russell, because, you know, you're looking at the World Cup and, you know, you're just off the back of that successful tournament for Juranovic. His transfer value is never going to be higher for Celtic to cash in than it will be in January. You wait till the summer, he could end up, you know, having a dip in form in the league. He'll almost end up being forgotten about at the World Cup because other players will come to the fore in the second half of the season. You know, in the Champions League, you know, clubs like Barcelona will still be looking at the top players that are playing in the top European tournaments at club level. I'm not as sure they'd be as interested in watching too much of the Scottish Premiership and keeping tabs as closely on Juranovic. I'm just using him as an example, but if you don't cash in on him now, you're probably going to find out you could end up his value's depreciated by the time you even got to the summer if you then end up selling him then. And, you know, domestically, we don't need Josip Juranovic to win the league title. The main reason for keeping him would be the fact, you know, that what we're saying here is we need to then keep him through the summer as well to actually get the real benefit out of it, because then you've got him for the next run at the Champions League, which we're hoping to be a part of next season, which means holding on to him for another year. Things don't go as well with Juranovic over a 12-month period. You could find that 20 million becomes 10 if, you know, his performance has dropped and Ralston ended up getting in ahead of him. That could all change again. So I think you have to cash in your chips sometimes when the players are at their highest value. And I think for Juranovic, it makes sense for him to go in January from both the player's point of view and the club's point of view.
I don't think you're wrong there at all. Gary Brown comes in and he's saying, is it Angie's decision to accept the sale price or is it the board? So what I would say to that, Gary, is I think Angie's got his fingerprints on sort of every aspect of Celtic. I think whilst the board will have the final say on a fee, do I think they would say, where do you value him at? How much do you think he's worth in the market? What's the going rate for a Juranovic, for a Giakoumakis example? And I certainly think his point will be taken right now. I think, you know, he would definitely be involved in recommending, shall we say, what sort of fee he thinks we can achieve for a player. Then I think the final decision would be with the board, if I'm honest, Gary. So a bit of both though there to that one, to be honest. Do you agree with that, Jonathan? I think they would certainly want Angie's input on it and go, what do you think's the right fee for it? And then the board go out and try and fight and negotiate to get that.
Well, I'd hope that would be the way it's been done. I think in the past we have seen a lot more interference from the board when it comes to bigger moves. I think personally where managers perhaps haven't been consulted as much as perhaps they should have been. But I do think with Postecoglou, it does seem like things are a bit different at the club in terms of transfer business since he's came in. For me, I think Celtic have done far more good than bad in the transfer windows since Postecoglou has been in the door. I think Postecoglou has earned their trust over the year and a half he's now been in the building. And I think they would be very wise to make sure they went through Postecoglou to make sure he had an idea as to what he felt Juranovic was worth. Because the last thing, as I keep always going back to, is you don't want to end up pissing off the big man by not getting his input and then potentially selling Juranovic on the cheap in his mind because Celtic haven't, you know, stood firm and just accepted the first bid that comes at them. You know, say, for example, we sold them for 15 and Ange Postecoglou is convinced we can get 20. I think you have to listen to the manager in a situation like that. If he's saying bids start at £20 million and he can go and Celtic then decide to sell him on the cheap, then of course that's going to always cause a bit of friction there. So I think the board will definitely take in Postecoglou's opinions. And by the way, I think he's absolutely earned that right. I don't think the board do this often enough but I think they've been almost backed into a corner in some ways with the sense of how well Postecoglou's done in the transfer windows.
Mate.
That they've got no option for me but to do that.
Aye, I think that's good. Steve O'Mac comes in. Steve we had the pleasure of meeting him on Friday, wasn't it? Friday night after the quiz. He was brilliant.
Yeah, it was great meeting him. Aye.
We're gonna. I think we might see a wee bit of Steve-O on the bus in the future. You never know. I think so. Though, if he's game, then that'd be fun. But he's saying, long-term squad days are over. Call it Stepping Stone FC if you want. I think he's using my terms against me here, Jonathan.
Yeah.
But we should be buying prospects, get 2-3 years on them, then sell whilst having replacements bedded in. Clever turnover is key. I'm all for that. The thing with Stepping Stone FC that I think frustrated me was that was what we were selling the vision of Celtic as to the player that was coming in. Whereas I think when you're bringing in players, you've got to be bringing them in as Celtic.
Yeah.
You know who it is you're joining. This is the biggest challenge. And they'll be acutely aware, Jonathan, of the fact other guys have lasted like 18 months in Juranovic's case, 2 years maybe in Giakoumakis's, etc. And the list will go on. And then got that move. But whilst they're signing because they're buying in to, like Alistair Johnson said at his presser last week, I'm here for the vision. And it was Ange that sold it to me. And the biggest prize I could get at Celtic would be another contract. That's, to me, represents a different hunger than going all out as your sort of key selling point, if you like, as come here, do well, you'll get a move. I think all that started with Lennon saying to Van Dijk in his first training session, enjoy it while you're here, mate, because you won't be here long. Yeah. And I just think, whilst it might have been tongue-in-cheek, I think there was a bit more to it than just that as well. There was this acceptance. Whereas if you're selling the project, the vision, etc., right, you should be selling it as, oh no, we want to be in the latter stages of the Champions League. You ain't going to be getting that. There's not many clubs that are going to be picking you up if you're coming to us in the first place that can offer you that. And I think sometimes there's ways and means of, yes, deep down knowing Stepping Stone FC is very likely to be the case to an extent, but don't sell Celtic as that. And I think we've seen a difference with the guys that Ange has brought in that, yes, whilst be it on paper, they might only be there the 2-3 years, but I think when they've joined, they've came with that real hunger to do well at Celtic, and none of them are really, I don't think, being itching for a move, despite the squad being extremely big at times and players maybe not getting as much game time as they would like. Maybe Giakoumakis is the first example. We could see his body language a wee bit different at the weekend, but we have spoke about that on the bus already. But that's what I would say to that, Jonathan. Stepping Stone FC is something that, yeah, Steve was right. We're going to need to make sure, we turn over the players at the right time, as you were saying as well. But when I was using that term, I think it was more, I was a bit despondent that we were trying to attract players to the club by selling us as such. I think we can be more than that as well.
Yeah, and I think Postecoglou does try and sell the vision of the football club. I'm a big believer in the fact that I don't think Postecoglou tells anyone, come here, then you can possibly get a move to the English Premiership in a couple of years' time. Don't think that's what happens when Postecoglou's in negotiations. I think he has a clear strategy, a clear plan as to what he wants to do with the football club whilst he's here. I think, when you sign players, like Giakoumakis and Jota, etc., you all know, everyone knows that the odds are they're probably going to end up going and trying something else at some point. They're not going to be the type of player that are going to stay at Celtic for the rest of their career. It's the elephant in the room, but it's an elephant that doesn't actually need to be addressed. It's more like a little baby elephant that's just trumpeting in the corner. You just leave it alone. It'll eventually come to fruition, but you don't need to actually always necessarily tackle those matters head on. I think if you sell the vision properly of the football club, and I think Postecoglou is an excellent way with words from what we see of him with the media, I think he'll be excellent with them when it comes to negotiations as well. It'd be very interesting if they ever did some sort of behind-the-scenes documentary, because I think Postecoglou would be fascinating to watch in the negotiation with a player, whether it be on a contract or whether it be on a new transfer deal he's trying to get over the line. I think Postecoglou would be a master in that sort of environment. And I think it all comes down to the fact Postecoglou bangs the drum of Celtic. You only have to watch him in his pressers to realise he never turns round and looks for any other excuses. He's never done it in the Champions League, where he could have potentially done it when he's up against the likes of Real Madrid. He was pissed off when we were getting hammered by Real Madrid because he believes in a vision, whereas, perhaps other managers might have just went, well, it's Real Madrid, that was always going to happen. We're not able to compete. and that's what we've seen happen across the city when they got spanked off Liverpool. So it's one of those ones where I think if Postecoglou continues to bang the drum, players come to Celtic for the right reasons, I don't think they're going to be as quick to make an exit from Celtic, provided the progress is still being made and Postecoglou and Celtic are living up to their end of the deal. Then I think players would be quite happy there, and I think you're obviously going to get more money the happier you can keep your players as well. If you're just turning around and saying to them, oh, well, come here, but in a couple of years' time, you could potentially be paying for whoever, West Ham, Brighton, whatever, in the Premiership, players are already going to have one eye on the exit door when they've already just came in, and you're never going to get the best out of them. You're never going to get the best of them. You're not going to get them fully committed to what you're trying to achieve, because they're already thinking, I'm only really here as a stopgap. This is a stepping stone. Whereas if they feel like they're part of a project and they've got something they're building towards, they're more likely to think, oh, I'm invested in this. If you want to get last 16 Champions League, let's go for last 16 of the Champions League. Can't get that from many clubs down in England. And then if you do manage something like that, it increases your value, and it actually means you're probably more likely to get a better move than a Brighton in English Premiership as well. So I think there's a brilliant way of dealing with things now, and I think Postecoglou goes about all of that in the correct manner.
Spot on, Jonathan. I like that, mate. Now it is that time on a Monday where we go to the main man, Phil McGinley. How are you, mate?
Hi, guys. How he's doing?
Very well, mate. How are you? Brilliant work on Friday, Phil.
Oh, yeah. Sorry, Phil. I wanted to get in my congratulations as well for the quiz. It was a really masterful quiz, I have to say. Only quiz I think I've ever played in where if you give too much information for a correct answer, you get deducted points. But that's why you're the quiz master.
Well, it started already. I was worried if it was safe for me to show my face around here tonight. But yeah, it's started already, folks. There we go.
If you've not seen the quiz, then do catch up. We did the quiz on Friday. It was brilliantly organised by Phil, and usually the best man tends to win these things.
It was about as dark arts tactics as Argentina was in the World Cup final at times. That was how bad it was.
Yeah, there was a lot of that going on if you haven't seen the quiz, a lot of back and forth between the Boyce'S brothers. Yeah, I did think Liam was going to sneak through and win due to that. You would be too busy arguing with each other and he would just get patches and win, but it was a thrilling end, to say the least. It went to the wire, to the very, very end. But if you haven't watched it, definitely give it a watch. But yes, it was, of course, that time for the little mini quiz on a Monday night. It is the Boyce'S brothers in battle and a bit of sudden death. At the moment, the current score is 6-4 to Russell. Jonathan's got a wee bit of momentum behind him. He's won 2 weeks on the bounce, closing that gap. So, yeah, as the penalty shootout style quiz here, five shots each for the boys. Obviously, I've got a question, good few answers to it. And obviously, get a right answer, gets them a goal. And obviously, if they get a wrong answer, this goalkeeper right here will save it and stop them from scoring. So, yeah, that is that time, guys. So, yeah, I'll just do all the aesthetic stuff just now, get all the music going and the background change, get that tension built, you know.
Oh, I like it, mate. I like it.
Oh, here we go. Here we go. Pressure on. Hoping for a strong refereeing performance tonight. I'm feeling confident Russell won't get in your head tonight, Phil.
I've got the comments off.
Okay. And of course, comments off as always, gentlemen. I know the answer to this already, but I need to ask every week. So, Jonathan, you won the last week. Do you wish to go first or second this week?
I'm still going first, thank you.
First, no worries at all. Okay, so tonight's question, there are a potential 15 answers for this one. Okay, so question tonight is, guys, it's coming up to that time of the year again, Christmas time, and as is tradition in the football calendar, there's usually a set of fixtures on either Christmas Eve, the 24th, or Boxing Day, the 26th. All I'm looking for is the name of any Celtic player who's scored in any of those fixtures since 2010. So it has to be a Christmas Eve game or a Boxing Day game. But you're going from 2010 to present day, so that gives you your date range. So if you start thinking of those squads, and there's going to be a lot of shots in the dark here, I think. A lot of shots in the dark.
There is. Okay, so anyone that scored on Boxing Day or Christmas Eve, I've got a vague recollection, but I guess this is guessing already. I think Lee Griffiths might have scored against Dundee. I think Lee Griffiths. I'm going to say Lee Griffiths.
All this detail.
Lee Griffiths is a correct answer, yes.
I will say Scott Sinclair.
Scott Sinclair is a correct answer. And also, again, I won't give you any more info, like what team they scored against, anything, just in case it jogs the memory of the other player.
Right, okay, very good, Phil. I am gonna say, Odson Edward.
Odson Edward is a correct answer, yes.
James Forrest.
That's what I was gonna say.
100 goals, 100 assists, yeah, there was 1 or 2 in there on Boxing Day or Christmas Eve.
Okay, I am going to say Gary Hooper.
Gary Hooper, he's let you down before, Jonathan, but tonight he hasn't let you down. He is a correct answer.
I think this is right. Last year was at McDermott Park, Leila Bada.
Leila Bada is correct, yes.
Yes.
Wow, well done. Oh, that was impressive.
Thanks so much, you patronising bastard.
I'm gonna say Mr. Dembele.
Moussa Dembele is a correct answer as well. 4-3 after 7. Doing well, boys.
This is a worry. Because I can imagine him indulging at Christmas a bit much. But I'm going to say Lee Griffiths.
Jonathan said it already.
I've said it.
You've already
said that.
I have to take your first
I
answer.
have to take the first answer, Russell.
So that one is a miss.
Too busy ranking. Well, didn't hear you say that.
This is actually similar to last week, where now Russell missed his 4th shot. If Jonathan scores this, he secures victory. But if he misses, Russell's back in there with a
3
chance.
wins in a row.
Oh, if only I knew somebody for sure that could definitely say it scored. I'm struggling. I will say Anthony Stokes.
Anthony Stokes, Gary Hooper's partner in crime. Anthony Stokes has let you down this time. That is a miss. Hooper was right this time and Stokes was wrong. So, Russell, you've got a chance to tie up, but you've got to obviously score now, mate.
Chris Commons.
Chris
That's a good
Commons.
one.
It sounds like it would be a good one, but it's not. Chris Commons is not a right answer in this case. He is not. And Jonathan has just scraped it by the skin of his teeth, and he's now right in the game. 6-5 is the score.
I can be at the rear view mirror, Russell. I'm coming.
So, guys, I'll give you the ones that he's missing. There's a few tough ones in there. So, obviously, it was starting from 2010 onwards. Neil Lennon's first full season. So, there was a game played on Boxing Day that year where Chad Uri and Ki Sung Young scored 2 goals in stoppage time against St Johnstone.
Wow.
And it was sub-zero conditions at Celtic Park that night. Chad Uri scored a wonder goal in stoppage time and then proceeded to take his shirt off while celebrating in about -6 conditions. Mental. Now here's a solid hand, Russell, that you wheel out on these ones a lot that you didn't go for. Georgios Samaras.
Ooh.
2011
Sammy.
and 2012. Virgil van Dijk. Remember his goal against St Johnstone where he ran for his own half and beat everybody? Just ran by like 6 or 7 players.
Who was that?
Virgil van Dijk. That was a Boxing Day game against St Johnstone.
Oh, yeah, I remember that.
Stuart Armstrong was a correct answer. Callum McGregor was a correct answer.
Yep.
David Turnbull was a correct answer, but that was the COVID season when nobody was attending games, but he was a right one. And also from the game last year that Russell managed to mention at Abada, Near Beaton scored the other goal in that game.
Oh.
There you go. It was Near Beaton.
That was alright.
Aye, that was good. Not too bad at all in terms of the what was it, 7 overall? Aye, not too bad going, guys.
Right.
So yeah, that concludes another Sutton Death. So it's now 6-5 on the scoreboard. Momentum definitely with Jonathan. Definitely with him.
Getting close. 3 in a row, Russell.
3 in a row, mate, I know. Make it interesting, eh? Gotta make it interesting. Make keep the numbers up, son.
Well, we know the dark arts will come into effect when I get my nose in front. I know what to expect from the establishment boys now.
From the establishment. Oh, brilliant. Right, okay. What is the score then? We are off tomorrow. There will be some YouTube shorts still going up from tonight, of course. We'll put up one tonight, one tomorrow, just to keep the channel ticking over. I know folk like watching just 60 seconds sometimes of a video, which I don't blame them for. We will be back with the Breakfast Bar, reviewing whatever dramatic scoreline there could be at Pittodrie, and previewing, more importantly, our fixture against Livingston. We'll be doing post-match pish on Wednesday night as well, the PMP. Thursday, then we've got the Thursday Night Forum back. Bustalgia this week on, Phil?
I just haven't decided yet. I was going to do there was a Christmas special that I had lined up, but I needed one person in particular from the team who had to attend for it, and he can't make it. So I've kind of scuppered my plans, but I'm going to keep that one on the back burner for a.
Was it by any chance all Boxing Day and Christmas Day goal scorers for Christmas? Because I'm available, Phil.
Well, yeah, you are the expert on it, but no, it was something outside my comfort zone, basically. But I'll come up with something. It'll be later in the week. I'll definitely have something put together. There will be Bustalgia on Friday night.
Brilliant. Right, okay, well, we look forward to that. It's another action-packed week on the bus. Thank you. There's been way over 120 watching most of tonight, so a big thanks to all you've been watching. Remember to hit that like button if you've not already. Do hit subscribe. If you're not subscribed, and hit the bell. What's wrong with you? Get it done. Get on the bus. Cause no fuss. Get a grip of yourself. It don't cost much. Good night.
Some of his comments about me deliberately trying to cause controversy. Well, I work in the media now, and you've got someone sitting there next to you who's an embarrassment to the media profession. He's an apologist. He's a charlatan.